Welcome to our weekly media briefing and public health update with Montgomery County Executive Mark Elridge. I'm Public Information Officer Mark Roper, and joining us today are Dr. Nina Ashford, Chief of Public Health Services, Mr. Sean O'Donnell, Deputy Chief of Public Health Services, Dr. James Bridgers, Director of the Department of Health and Human Services, Dr. Earl Stoddard, Assistant Chief Administrative Officer, and today we have two guests, Michael Baskin, the county's Chief Innovation Officer, and Dr. Neil Kleiman, the lead with Innovate US and Urban Policy Professor with Northeastern University School of Public Policy and Urban Affairs. Thank you for joining us today. Mr. County Executive, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for joining us again this week. I want to start by talking this week about the news about Merit International's plans to lay off workers just after the new year, January of 2025. I'm sure that the news is not welcomed by the affected employees, but it's not unusual news in this day and age. Merit has been an important partner in the county for many decades, and that's not going to change. I've reached out to have a conversation with Merit leaders about this decision and future plans. What we don't know right now is the underlying cause of the decision. They've talked about a reorganization, and that's one thing that we can learn from talking to them is what is underlying this decision. That will help us gauge the implications in broader terms in the county. Restructuring certainly is not an exclusive for Marriott. Many other companies have made similar decisions, sometimes based on what they learned about themselves from the pandemic, and sometimes because they've seen new technology that can allow them to streamline their operations. So I think we have a couple of things at play that companies are thinking about. And as much as I would like to have every person stay in their job, it is not illogical that a company would look at their operations and ask themselves whether they can do them better or more efficiently. Not always pleasant, but not illogical. We've seen throughout the county the shrinkage of office space use, even when companies renew leases. That's been an issue, and restructuring is not an uncommon reason for that. Marriott Company told local media that they anticipate hiring back many of the employees they intend to displace and what they described as a corporate restructuring. There are apparently empty positions they haven't filled, and they may move people around to fill these positions. So we will see what happens in January. Hopefully we'll meet with Marriott and get a better idea, and hopefully all of us will learn something from this. I anticipate they're going to continue to employ several thousand people from the new headquarters in Bethesda for years to come. The company bounced back, obviously, from the impacts of the pandemic, and I believe they're going to rebound again. The Marriott family and company have been a staple of Montgomery County business community since 1927, nearly 100 years, when they opened their first hot shop. Montgomery County has been referred to as our nation's hospitality headquarters capital. Besides Marriott, we're also home to Choice Hotels, Host Hotels, HMS Host, and Sodexo. In fact, many of you heard me in my briefings talk about the University of Maryland's Institute for Health Computing. While we talk about how important this institute is for life sciences and companies in the economic development growth of North Bethesda, we haven't talked much about the fact that the AI part of this, that was part of the original university, had already started cooperating with these local hotels and giving them access to AI and helping them use AI for their own planning. So the IHC is already working with our hospital companies, and we anticipate that will continue. We believe that this institute is not only critical to growing of our life science and tech industries, but we're also going to be able to grow and attract hospitality companies interested in Montgomery County. And the other thing we've been doing is working with the University of Maryland. We've been able to expand the original scope of our project, and the county will be opening its first tech incubator based on our broader use of artificial intelligence in the real world applications. I do look forward to working with Marriott along with all the businesses and companies in our hospitality industry to ensure that they will have continued long-term success here in the county. This week, like most of the other weeks, I'm going to talk a little bit about attainable housing strategies and give a little update. This week, the County Council was briefed on the public comment regarding the Attainable Housing Strategies Initiative recommended by the Montgomery Planning Board. Residents weighed in record numbers, most of them unhappy, and an overwhelming number voiced concerns with the Attainable Housing Plan, both at listening sessions and via email. Some council members raised similar concerns during the session. The planning board sent a plan that does not address, in fact, didn't even study the increased stress on our infrastructure, on traffic, on parking, on tree cover, on stormwater, on flooding. And interestingly, in this 3 years of work they've done, they consulted WSSC in September of this year. There is another big concern the council heard from the public, and that's why develop a plan to add housing if it's not focused on creating more affordable housing. I think, as some of you with long memories remember, this original plan was rolled out as being about affordable housing. And after people started looking at it, myself and others, and then the planning board with the study they did, they realized it isn't about affordable housing. So they changed the name to attainable housing. They act like attainable housing is a thing, but we have an internal document from Park and Planning where they actually say they invented attainable housing. So basically, you pretend like you pretend like something's a thing and that you're adopting it, whereas the thing you're adopting is actually something you invented. Nobody talks about attainable housing because it has no real meaning. What does attainable mean? Does it mean attainable to a millionaire? Does it mean attainable to somebody making $30,000? Do you have the same policy if you're providing millionaire housing versus housing for people earning $30,000? No, you don't. And so this attainable housing policy actually has no grounding in the kind of questions I think you would want to ask. The other thing is that when the Council of Governments, I got to read this off a piece of paper, so forgive me, but we have a letter from the Council of Governments that was written on October 17th, 2019, and this is when these large targets came out. And this is what the Council of Governments had to say. The results of their initial assessment confirm that the region can accommodate within existing comprehensive plans and zoning. I'm going to say that again. Within existing comprehensive plans and zoning, significantly more housing than the 100,000 units called for in the board directive. 100,000 units of what was called for in the region, and they are assuring us that they have more than enough capacity for this housing. In April, the planning directors reported they had further determined that all the additional housing, I'll say that again, determined that all the additional housing could be accommodated within the region's activity centers and around planned network of high-capacity transit areas. I have been saying this from the beginning. I used to serve on the Planning and Housing Committee on the council. I've had staff members in my office who have been former planning board members, former deputy directors of the planning board, former staff of the planning board. So I understand more than a little bit about planning. And I can tell you, and I've been telling people, that everything that Park and Planning tells you is coming here is coming out of the projections of what will be built in Montgomery County in 5-year timescales over a 30-year horizon. Nothing that I just read to you is shocking to me because that's the premise on which everything's been done for a very, very long time. So in my mind, it answers the very first question. Why are we doing this and why do we need to do it? We pretty much have already solved the problem. We have the capacity and we're just not using it properly. In the current budget, we devoted record funding, $161 million to producing and preserving affordable housing, including an increase of $56 million to the Montgomery County Housing Initiative Fund from last year's budget. We already have enough demand on that fund to fill the coming year and probably most of the next year, and that's already. Affordable housing should remain the main focus of the county's housing initiatives. While we see the most projected market, that most of what's projected is going to be market development. So when I talk about county projections, when they say 30,000 new households are needed by 2030, those new households are going to be largely, probably 85%, are going to be market rate housing, and mostly not single family housing, mostly townhouses and other buildings. So that's already in our existing plan. And it is important that government has to act therefore for the production of affordable units, because affordable units just simply don't address, the number we produce don't address the need that we have in the county. And the private sector can't simply build enough to address the supply shortage. So the private sector has never been a major provider of affordable housing. It is pretty much, for the longest time, been the government's responsibility to figure out how to provide enough subsidy that we can produce the affordable housing we need. And I think, as all of us know, the government has not had the means to provide enough subsidy to provide all the housing we need. But we can't simply ignore the need for this workforce housing. We understand there's a problem with housing affordability in this county and around the country. This is nothing new, but it's not a zoning problem. And it's not resolved by rezoning 82% of single-family zones in Montgomery County. As I just read you, we have the capacity to do this without rezoning 1 square inch of single-family zones, let alone 82% of the single-family zones. And if we look at our existing zoning, we have enough capacity for the housing to be built, but much of what's planned to be built is out of reach for too many residents. I want to show you this slide. It's the what is our need and the Council of Governments. Can you guys flip back to that? It's a couple of slides back. There you go. Thank you. So this again comes the Council of Governments. I want to remind you, I like taking stuff from Park and Planning and Council of Governments because they kind of make my points pretty well. First is the regional proposed target. This is for Montgomery County, DC, and the Northern Virginia counties, as well as Prince George's County. And it says at least 330 housing units need to be added to the region between 2020 and 2030. This is an additional 75 units beyond the units that were forecast for this period. So I could tell you what the forecast was for Montgomery County. It was about 30,000 units by 2030. They then added 10,000, so our target should have been 40,000. I will point out, and I didn't include it in this slide, but I can provide it to you later, that this year, the Planning Board and the Council of Governments actually lowered the housing target, not just below 40, but below 30,000 units. So our target for 2030 is now lower than 30,000 units, lower than the 30,000 that were projected when COG made this recommendation to add more units, and certainly a whole lot lower than the 40,000 units they claimed that we needed to build. So we have a credibility problem here if people are telling you that you need to do this and you can't build it in your zoned environment. But here's the probably worst part of this: accessibility. They didn't just tell us that we needed to build a certain amount of units, go build those units. What they said is that at least 75% of all new housing should be in activity centers or near high capacity transit. Park and Planning's plans are not all near activity centers, except in a couple of places where they just drew the lines around an activity center massively bigger, making the meaning of center absolutely meaningless. But basically it needs to be in those areas. And then they said affordability. 75% of the new housing should be affordable to low and middle income households. What do they mean by that? Low income household, by their definition, could afford only a unit going up to $1,300. $1,300. 38% of the units they projected that we would need are units that don't rent for more than $1,300. Another 40% of the units, again, that they projected we need, another 40% would serve people from $1,300 to $100,000. And about half of them are for people below $80,000. So if you get the picture, more than half the housing that we need to build needs to be affordable. As I said, COG targets 75% of the new housing should be affordable. So this little graph here is from Park and Planning's Attainable Housing Strategy Explainer, as they called it. And they put this question on the front page and they say, is this affordable housing? And they answer it, no. The prices of the newly built homes will be determined by the market. So here you've got Park and Planning telling you that they're not going to build what COG said they needed to build, and yet claiming that their housing targets are derived by COG. So I've said this before, this is a con game. And it's about misleading people into thinking this housing was going to be affordable, which all of us agree. I mean, if somebody came forward and said, we're going to build 30,000 affordable units in this county for people between 30% of AMI and 100% of AMI, that would be a really good thing. But that's not what they're planning to do. And I hope that you guys in the press will look at this information, because it's actually the crux of what people's, I'd say, dissatisfaction with the plan is, and particularly with the crux of my dissatisfaction of what park and planning is doing. At the very least, the planning board needs to begin by defining the problem they're trying to solve, and they just can't make it up. And they need to explore the potential adverse consequences of their proposed solutions. Again, since they reference Thrive a lot when they talk about this, during Thrive, the county government's job was to provide estimates for the cost of infrastructure. Our departments assessed stormwater, traffic, roads, all the things we need to build, schools, and they gave that number to the council and to the planning board. And at the time they introduced the number, that was Hans Reamer, and the planning board chair said, "We don't believe it." And of course, in all good, well thought out processes, that was the end of the discussion. Not only didn't they believe it, but they also dismissed it. They didn't do anything to study it. And that's one of the huge problems associated with rezoning this much of the county. The infrastructure you have today will not support it. You will have to build major new transportation and major new stormwater if you're going to accommodate this kind of growth in these places. So it's a concerning thing. And I'm particularly concerned about just their unwillingness to deal with affordable housing. And it takes a lot to actually put on the front page of your document that you're not building affordable housing. I mean, what is the point of this? Meaningful solutions actually require serious conversations and dialogue. Park and planning didn't have very many serious conversations. Most people who attended the conversation called them charades rather than charrettes. Their input certainly isn't shown in the documents, and we'll have more on that. We'll bring some residents into the future to talk about their experience with a park and planning charrette. Much of the impact of this is also going to be borne by people of color that are disproportionately lower income, and also for young people, because young people getting out of school. And I get to ask this, I've done a number of forums, and people say, well, what about my kid coming back here? And where are they going to find a house they can afford? Actually, they're not. And park and planning made that clear, because they're only building market rate housing. So nope, you're not going to get any new housing that your young kid can afford compared to what park and planning plans on building. I'm also concerned about the lack of studies on infrastructure and environmental impacts. You would think you'd want to know all these things, but apparently that is not of interest. I think we're going to deal with it when the plan gets submitted. I can tell you now that we've evaporated pretty much all of our controls over traffic. So getting any traffic relief is unlikely to come from anything down the road. And because the council has been reducing since 2013 the impact taxes the county collects, we've also in a worse position in terms of building the infrastructure that's required. This is going to require a lot of infrastructure. Every time the council lowers the impact fees on developers, they reduce the amount of infrastructure that can build unless we raise taxes on residents. I am not a fan of the impact taxes. I have made proposals repeatedly to adopt Virginia's system, which actually works for developers, but it also works for local government. It can provide more money, reduce the cost of development, and actually spur economic growth in the county. And Virginia has obviously done a much better job doing that. And their former Republican governor back in 2013, when he signed the legislation that gave Virginia this special taxing authority, predicted that Northern Virginia would explode, that we'd see a new generation of development, and that's pretty much what happened. Montgomery County chose a different path, and I would describe that path as digging the hole deeper rather than trying to find a way out of the hole. There's a lot to talk to, and we're going to continue to talk to residents of the county and help them understand what's happening and what's behind this. On the bright side, there's a Chimes groundbreaking on Thursday. Chimes is a new apartment development, and it's happening in North Bethesda. And what makes this one stand out is every single one of the 163 units being built is going to be affordable. The apartments will be a half mile from the Red Line on Neville Street, and will include family-sized units delivering housing options that are genuinely affordable for residents earning between 30 and 80% of the area median income. Our county is committed to nearly $20 million to this project, which will have a total cost of $86 million. We have many partners in this, including Montgomery Housing Partnership, Truist, and Amazon. We also have received state and federal help from the Maryland Housing and Community Development Administration and also Freddie Mac. This is kind of the example of being able to create new housing that allows working families an opportunity to live here in Montgomery County, and has been one of my top priorities as county executive. This is, after all, our workforce. This project will help families who make too much to qualify for federal housing assistance, but still struggle financially to meet rents in this market. And I hope you can join us for that very important update on Thursday at 10 a.m. at the Chimes. We're going to talk a little bit about generative AI in the county. The use of artificial intelligence is a big topic. We know for many different people in many different industries, and government is we're no stranger to this discussion. And the use of artificial intelligence in our government has the potential to make us more efficient and effective for our residents. However, implementing AI in government is particularly one of our size, has to be taken very seriously and deliberatively. You just can't turn on the switch and say everybody gets access to AI. So we've been careful about how we go forward with this. Although there's no question that AI is ultimately going to revolutionize how many people work, there are also risks that go along with the rewards that it can produce. And so as we move forward, we're moving forward with a pretty high awareness of potential risks here. For a government like ours, implementing AI in our operations isn't something you can simply do. We have to worry about data and data privacy concerns with information that we work with. There are environmental and sustainability impacts of AI in terms of energy usage, the building of data centers, and how to power them. And like all the new technologies, there's often fear and frustration with learning and understanding how to adapt to working with it. And, to be perfectly honest about it, there are examples of AI not behaving itself. And, it's known to lie. I've actually made inquiries. I'll even tell you this, I'll be quick. I read a story about a report about a writer, and he queried AI about who he was. He didn't say, this is who I am. He just put in a prompt like, who is so-and-so? And AI came back and it told him who so-and-so was. And he said it was pretty accurate, a few mistakes, no big deal. It did the exact same prompt the second time. And he came back and told him that he was dead. And so he asked AI for information like, when did he die? Birth, death certificate, any of that kind of stuff. And he had an article, and he said this article was written after his death. So how do you explain that? And AI explained it by saying either it was written by an imposter or it was published posthumously. So that was one of those articles in Wired magazine, and I sat at my computer at home and I replicated. I put in the guy's name twice. I got the good answer the first time, the bad answer the second time. That is why you've got to be careful working with AI. I tell this story because none of us can be naive about it, which is why we have to take this really, really seriously. So there's a lot of potential for our employees to responsibly and ethically use generative AI tools to better support our residents. And for example, a number of businesses can use AI to quickly organize information from multiple sources into personalized support for a small business owner. And we really are not just want to do this internally, but we really want to help make this available to folks in our business community, because this could be useful for a lot of companies that we would like to help. I'm proud of the work that's being done by our technology department called TEBS, and it's doing this at an enterprise scale, like Monty 2.0, who's our 311 chatbot. And Monty 2.0 is a work in progress that is a long way down the road. It's doing really well. It's getting more accurate answers than we were ever able to provide before, and getting more complete answers a lot faster. So hopefully it'll continue to get even better, and we'll continue to see improved customer satisfaction. I'm excited for what all of our employees can do and explore and experiment with these new tools. And I'm going to turn it over to our folks, our Chief Innovation Officer, Michael Baskin, to join me for today's meeting and to who's helping our employees adopt new methods and help to broker this partnership to provide high quality, no cost courses to the county. We're also joined by Dr. Neil Kleiman, a lead in Innovative US, and he's a professor at Northeastern University who helped develop these trainings with public sector workers from across the country. You guys can explain the trainings better than I can.
Thanks, County Executive. Yeah, I think one of the major things the County Executive has always supported is making sure that everyone in our workforce is equipped with the methods and the tools to find more productive and effective ways of getting things done for our residents and those we serve. And generative AI is a tool like others that are imbued with values, and we want to learn how to use them responsibly. Neil, maybe you might be able to sort of help us understand what generative AI is and why it matters for public sector employees.
Thanks so much, Michael. And first, I just want to start by recognizing the county executive, Michael, and everyone from Montgomery County as being so innovative. I am not only a professor, but I spent a lot of time working with professional government organizations around the country. I work a lot with National Association of Counties, National League of Cities, National Governors Association, and Montgomery County comes up again and again and again. I mean, having Michael here, and I worked with him when he was in a similar role in Chattanooga, Tennessee, it is just no surprise that we are a group focused very much on innovation and upskilling, and we are doing a press conference here in Montgomery County, and we are not doing it elsewhere today. And so it makes all the sense in the world. And I was just taking in the words of the county executive, which is really emblematic of where the public sector is right now, which is understanding the possibilities of AI, but being highly aware of the risks that are involved, right? So we talk about AI making stuff up and hallucinating. That is true, but there are so many things that AI can do to be more effective. And it really gets at the heart of what we are doing with Montgomery County, which is addressing something that I think of as a silent crisis within government. And that is, how do we upskill the workforce? We don't have the time within government moving so quickly to send everyone back to school and get a master's in public administration like at a school that I'm at. We need to upskill quickly, expeditiously, and we need to very much take on issues of AI and how we work with it right now. And so our organization, Innovate US, has its roots within Northeastern University, but we're really about providing no-cost training in partnership with local governments around the country. So what we do is raise philanthropic dollars from foundations to then work in partnership with local governments and provide training modules. And we also do customized workshops and have trained 50,000 workers around the country, and again, working very closely with Montgomery County, and have close working partnerships with those places that have made a commitment to understanding AI, to using it, and to respecting the challenges and the difficulties. So working very closely with the state of California, the state of Maryland, the state of Ohio, the state of Pennsylvania, and if it's not clear at this point, Montgomery County is the largest county that we're working directly with. And what we've done is we have created a number of courses. We can share the link with you. Any of you who are on the Zoom are able to take a look at them as well. And we focus on innovation skills, but particularly on generative AI. And some of you may know the distinction between Gen AI and traditional AI. And Gen AI, I think, as Michael was getting at, is a very new technology in the sense that it has the ability, in my mind, to level the playing field, to make complicated ideas and concepts and programs and policies and regulation, and when we're talking about zoning and housing, it can take all of that and spit it back out in very clean, clear language. That makes it infinitely helpful to all of us, especially residents within the county, to understand what these policies are. So it can, again, level that playing field to understand what it is that we're doing with the public sector. It also has the ability, unlike a typical Google search, to provide original analysis. It can help you draft a press release thinking about what we're doing right here. I've used it to draft press releases for me. But what it can't do is the work on its own. that's where you really have to work with AI responsibly. So I might ask it to draft a press release like I did for this convening here, but then I check it. You need to work side by side with AI. And that's what we're doing in our training with Montgomery County. And we go over the basics. We provide a framework for engaging with AI in the public sector. We provide use cases and examples. We talk about protecting confidentiality, and we also talk about the security risks. And also what it is that we can do to improve government services, to expedite government services, and to help take on some of the more onerous, tedious tasks so that those within government can focus more intently in areas where we need human judgment to play a part. So we could not be more excited to be working in partnership with Montgomery County and all of the workers there.
Thanks, Neil. I think the sort of the spirit that Innovate US brings of public servant training for us and by us means that's really rooted in the experience of all of the employees. And I think what we're trying to do with generative AI here is make sure that rather than just looking at, in addition to looking at sort of these enterprise use cases, with these emerging technologies, we want to see what can employees come up with and what are the types of things that they might be able to do. And so we often have employees take their job classification, their job description, put it into ChatGPT or one of these other tools and say, what are the types of things that I might be able to go and how might this apply to my job? And then to go and experiment with that. I'd be interested to hear what are the other things that you're hearing from other public servants? What are the types of things that they're doing that are enabling them to deliver more for residents? By using generative AI?
I mean, a lot of times what I'm finding that governments are getting really smart about is that they're realizing AI is not a tool for understanding something you don't know anything about. It's actually a tool to use where you do have expertise. So going back to how we started about affordable housing, if you're a real estate developer or if you're working on public housing or affordable housing, then you can use AI to better understand a lot of the documents that you're reading. So we worked recently with state government to take all of the various regulations and zoning that are part of affordable housing for the last 10 years, pour it into a chat bot where you can then ask basic questions and say, I'm interested in how we could have better performance incentives for developers around affordable housing. Give me 3 creative ideas, and it will spit out 3 creative ideas. Now, will each one be useful? Will each one be factually correct? Maybe, maybe not, but it's almost like working with a smart colleague to get the juices flowing, to get good ideas going, and to synthesize vast amounts of information that are difficult for us to do on our own. So what I'm finding governments are doing when they embrace it is, number one, they're realizing that there is potential for mistakes, but number two, they're using it to leapfrog forward to understand what those complicated issues are. The one other thing I would say that I'm really excited governments are doing is to use the translation function, because you can easily translate not just complicated documents for an average user, but you can also translate it into different languages. And of course, it's available 24/7 to answer questions for residents or for administrators to answer questions from one another about documents that they're storing on AI. I can just hop on my computer any time of day or night and query it about information that other colleagues are working on.
Yeah, I think that idea of it being sort of an additional colleague for us, and it's a complement, not a substitute for the work that our employees are doing, but by helping people to to sort of use these tools responsibly and understand how we get better at these tools each and every day, just as the tools get better, it allows us to do our work for residents well. I think we're going to pass it over to the next folks. And Neil, I just really want to say how grateful we are for Innovate US for helping to sort of design these classes with us and make sure that it's coming into fruition and rolling them out and always being there to learn and figure out what's coming next and how we can better prepare to upskill our workforce to be ready for it.
And we'll open up this time to questions for any members of the media who have any questions for Michael Baskin or Dr. Kleiman about AI. Raise your hand if you have any questions about AI. Annalisa, if you want to go ahead.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. Just wanted to follow up on just how the training will help the county. Is it just the basics of AI? I know you mentioned generative AI, but how, TechCrunch just released a whole article about how Sam is working now with OpenAI to train teachers on how to bring uh, AI and Chat GPT into the classroom best. What are we trying to maybe solve for here? Are we trying to teach people how to use AI in a way that's more beneficial? What are we trying to do here exactly?
I'll just start. I mean, one of the things that I think is interesting about the adoption of this technology is you have a number of governments, particularly state governments, that are passing down edicts and requirements to use this technology and to use it responsibly. So there's a lot of activity within government to make sense of it, and most of us don't. And so a lot of what these courses do is just provide the basics, a foundation of what is this technology? What does it do? What doesn't it do? Where are the risks involved? So that we're all sort of in one common place. So we all know how to use our computer, flip it open. We know how to jump on the internet, all of that. That's not the case with AI. And so this is really taking you by the hand to walk you through what it is so that those within the public sector at least have a baseline understanding of what that technology is. And then the second part is it creates a framework to see how you can use it to improve efficiency and creativity within the work that you're traditionally doing. And then from there, I think the sky's the limit, in which we are open to continuing to partner with Montgomery County in other ways that they can be innovative with it. But again, it's really about providing that foundation.
Yeah.
Got it. Any other counties that you guys are working with, by the way?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Any other counties in the region that you're working with as well?
I might look to my colleague, Jess Silverman, who might know if there are other counties in the region, or we could put it in the chat.
Not necessarily in the region. I mean, we are working directly with the state of Maryland, and they have released a public commitment to training their workforce with our trainings as well. In terms of other counties, right now we are currently engaging with Miami-Dade County in Florida. And so our trainings really span local, federal, state government.
Yeah. So when we saw the state of Maryland bringing their workforce online, we want to make sure that our workforce is ready to adapt to these new opportunities that are there. So that when we're collaborating with our counterparts, we are using in those same skills and tools, and that we're attracting that workforce who is now ready in using those tools. And part of the idea of this training with these foundational courses is we're still, by we, I mean across the globe, are exploring what these tools can be used for. And by putting them directly in the hands of employees and users, we're having them find lots of ways that they can use them. So managers are using it to help them prepare for hard conversations with their employees. The procurement team has put all of their information into one of these tools so that they can more quickly answer questions for businesses who are trying to do work with county government. For public meetings, we're building agendas with those public meetings and then using generative AI to help us anticipate the types of questions that might be coming our way so we can be better prepared to answer resident questions. And these are all the types of use cases that emerge when we equip employees with the basic tools, understanding of how to use them well, and what those challenges might be. And then they're then beginning to figure out what are all the ways that they can be used for their everyday work.
And just to add one other point here, the last time there was a big wave in technology in terms of whether it's the internet or data analytics and all that, there was this phrase called smart cities. And so a lot of counties and local governments felt as though they had to get smart, right? You don't want to be a dumb city. And so people were signing up for smart cities, but that was really training that was rooted in private vendors that wanted you to buy their technology and their software programs. Everything we do is free. We're a nonprofit. We're affiliated with university. We want to get ahead of this technology before private vendors get in. And that's why we're doing this in partnership with the county executive and with Michael Baskin to make sure it's meeting their needs and their priorities, and that we're not charging a dime for it, because this has to be something owned and run by the public sector, not where we're selling something to the public sector.
So to give you an idea of like what to me, what I play with it a little bit. I wish I had more time to sit and work on that instead of everything else I do. But one of the most intriguing demos I saw was with a real world product. And I know there are other companies that have the same product, and I won't tell you who the vendor was, but they were showing that, you know, in a doctor's office, the time of the visit is the time with the patient, but then the writing of the report. And they said doctors spend about half their total time on report writing and doing all the stuff to take their handwritten notes during a meeting and then summarize it and write it into a report and put that into a file. They recorded interviews. They'd have a patient and they'd have the doctor. The doctor would ask all the questions. The AI is recording it. At the end of the conversation, he asks to summarize the conversation. The conversation summarized. It captures all the recommendations. They have a verbatim copy of the transcript of what was said, and all the doctor has to then go back and review the summary. Did the summary capture what was in there? Are my recommendations there? And it cuts out half of the time. And this is not just usable for a doctor. We have people in our offices and social services who do a lot of interviews. And then they have to transcribe the interview into something that's written. And then they've got to figure out what are they going to do with it. And the AI can answer a lot of those questions. And the more robustly you ask AI to query what the information it's collected, the more robust answers you're likely to get. So I envision this as a way of really helping workers, you know, do work more efficiently, more quickly, give them more time. Because when you're a social worker and you've got one interview stacked up after another interview, buying 10 or 15 minutes between the next thing you have to do is time you can spend thinking about, what do I need to do for this person? Who else should I have contact this person? You could even, you know, once you've collected patient information, instantly know every program in Montgomery County that person's eligible for, based on the kind of information you might collect in one of these interviews. So I see it as something that makes people more efficient. I think would give them a higher level of job satisfaction and help them take some of the burden, time pressure of just the crunch of trying to get one thing done to go to the next thing. I think breathing space is a good thing for human beings to have, particularly when you're interviewing lots of people over and over and over again.
Any other questions?
So, I'm sorry, just to summarize what the county executive said. So just in terms of using the AI tools that are already out there, training them how to better use it in the workplace.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Thank you, Annalisa. Any other questions from the media about AI? Going once, twice? Okay, Mr. County Executive, back to you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed that. Anytime we talk about AI, you've got my attention. So thank you very much. So a couple other things. Before we get to your questions, I wanted to acknowledge an accolade that the county recently got. The Public Religion Research Institute has recognized Montgomery County as the most religiously diverse county in the nation. Its census of American religion is said to be among the most reliable sources of data on religion, since the U.S. Census does not ask about faith. New Hampshire Avenue on the county's east side is a good example of the diversity. Within a few miles of each other sits Kingdom's Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses, the Cambodian Buddhist Society, the Muslim Community Center, and the Maryland Hindu Milan Mandir. There are also churches that deliver their messages in Spanish and Vietnamese. There's a lot of diversity here in terms of the people who live here, and the distinction is not simply being about home to more mosques and temples and synagogues, but it's what their presence here represents. We have helped communities build strong foundations here. When I've gone around to our visits to other countries looking to get companies to locate here, our diversity is actually a selling point. It's not just something we say and, isn't this great that we're diverse? It actually makes a difference when somebody from South Korea or India is thinking, I want to expand in the United States. Where's the best place to expand? I can tell you the best place to expand is a place that actually respects who you are, doesn't have any laws that distinguish you from anybody else in terms of how you should expect to be treated, where the institutions in that community, whether they're religious, cultural, ethnic, or food types, where all those things that you would find in your home country, you can find here. That has really great value to people. And it's something that's important when people think about, am I going to bring people over here to work with me? And are they going to feel comfortable there? So I'm really proud of, the direction that the county's gone on. And I think it's really important. And next week's Thanksgiving, when so many of our families in our county, no matter their religion, race, and ethnicity, will gather around tables to celebrate their families, their history, and their heritage. And it's wonderful to know in this county that so many of these tables will have people of different cultures, eating different foods and beliefs that are coming to celebrate the things that they're really thankful for here. And I do want to say, I do like the twist of this holiday from Thanksgiving Day to Thanksgiving. There's a lot for a lot of people to be thankful for many of us to be thankful for. Celebrating the pilgrims invading here and taking over native lands and displacing the people who lived here, and then leading to the continental-wide displacement of people, is not exactly a bright spot in human history. But being thankful for the things in all of our lives that make a difference and that have made us happier, that have, I think are positive, that make us feel good and make us want to get up the next morning and go about doing the things we do. It's good to have that to be thankful for, and it's good that we can bring people together from lots of different aspects of life and still sit around and talk what we're thankful for together. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to turn it over to my health team if they have any updates, and then we'll go to questions.
The only reminder I have is that we are seeing RSV spread primarily through our younger children in school settings, but that can also spread to parents and grandparents. So we encourage you to be aware of that. And seniors are the ones who have the most significant outcomes from RSV. So your children will probably be okay, but please, if they have respiratory disease, especially as we go into the holiday season, try to keep them away from the grandparents. And again, this is a good time for those grandparents to get the RSV vaccination. Dr. Davis, do you have any other additions?
No, thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. Nothing additional from me. Dr. Stoddard?
Nothing additional. We can get to questions.
Any final questions from the media as we open it up to questions? Anything else you want to ask? Raise your hand if you do have a question. Ginny, go ahead.
Hi, Mark. Hi, both Marks today. I just realized. Mr. Ulrich, I know you recently shared that you're considering running for a council seat in the future. Could you talk kind of about your reasoning for that and what you think you would accomplish beyond this term as county executive?
Well, executive and council member are two very different things. As executive, you're actually responsible for running things. As a council member, you're involved in policy. I spent 12 years on the council. I was pretty deeply involved in policy, and I actually like policy. So it would continue with my interest in, having an effect on policy, whether it's an effect as a county executive or as an effect as a council member. I certainly bring a lot of experience to this position because, I will have spent 8 years as an executive, and being on the council, I can tell you from my experience on the council, you may appropriate money for budgets, but the understanding of how things actually work and what it takes either to change things, move things, implement whatever, that's not something you get from the council side of the discussion. You get briefings from people that, may be an hour long. That is way different than sitting in an endless series of meetings with people in different departments, or what are they dealing with? What are their problems? One of the things I think you learn to really quickly appreciate is you may want to do something tomorrow. You may not be able to pivot institutionally to do everything you want to do tomorrow. So I think I would bring a lot of extra knowledge that I've learned as an executive. I continue to have a pretty deep involvement in the issues we deal with So I've not been passive. I think my staff would tell you I'm not really very passive. I'm pretty engaged in things we do. And I think I would bring that to the council. So, and I wasn't too tired to run for county executive, so I'm certainly not too tired to run for county council. I still feel pretty good.
Do you have any thoughts about who, I mean, there's a lot of rumors about potential, even before the term limits initiative came up, there's been rumors about who might hope to succeed you. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I'll tell you my thoughts when I get ready to.
Okay.
I have pretty strong opinions. What I said at the night of the election was, I certainly want to make sure the next county executive is not beholden to the developers.
Mhm.
And I have no qualms repeating that because I'm probably going to say that a lot of times. I mean, it is important that this county executive think about the residents and focus on residents first and not be overly influenced by the influence of money. That's why I've been publicly financed. I was publicly financed before publicly financed was a thing. And if you ever looked at, go back on my record of contributions, almost all my money always came from individuals. I think that matters. And having people who are not financed that way, I think that brings risks with it.
Thanks. And I will bug you on that later.
I'm sure you will.
Thank you, Ginny. Natalie?
Hi, thanks. Mr. County Executive, I wanted to shift to talking about President-elect Trump's threat to use the military to carry out mass deportations. I have a couple of questions for you,
Sure.
but one big thing, do you have or are you developing a plan for addressing a federal request to assist in removing undocumented immigrants?
If he defines it as a federal problem, I guess the federal government needs to solve it.
Sure.
That's as clear as I'm going to be. I mean, if that's his problem, he'll find a way to solve it. Meantime, I've got to make sure my resources take care of the people of Montgomery County. I do not want to displace resources from the service of the people who live here when the president has at his disposal unlimited money and unlimited resources.
Gotcha. And will your county law enforcement assist federal agents or the military in a mass deportation effort if asked, essentially allowing themselves to be deputized?
I can't answer that without talking to my legal folks, but I think you could guess where I would go. If I don't have to do something, I'm not doing it, particularly when it comes to violating human rights.
Sure.
Our police department has never been a participant in the deputization process that actually predates County Executive Elrich, and I think it's been a long-term standing policy of the police department. And I certainly, to the county executive's point, I don't think there would be any reason for us to change that position. That said, obviously, and I think the county executive alluded to this last week, if we have opportunities to work to eliminate violent criminals from our community or gangs or things of that nature, that's one thing. But participating in a broader mass deportation of otherwise, peaceful, non-violent, not doing anything, people who are here seeking asylum, for example, that's an entirely different matter altogether.
And we won't have to change our policy. I mean, as Earl alluded to, the county's not actually a sanctuary county, much as people like writing that all the time, because we've recognized pretty much from the beginning that when it comes to violent criminals, drug traffickers, and, people who are truly dangerous and a threat to the public, we have not hesitated to cooperate. But it's the other folks, when you're going to start rounding up somebody simply because they don't have papers, but they go to work every day, they pay taxes, their kids are in school, and you just decide because you didn't come here the right way, you're going to be gone. That's stuff we have not participated in. I shudder to think what would happen if the president extended that to all Americans and made sure that everybody who came here from Europe came here legally, as opposed to came here some other way and just happens to be here now. We're going to go back and take all of us back because we may not have gone through legal channels originally. I don't know.
Gotcha. And just for my own reference, I'm a reporter for the Capitol in Annapolis. I'm not as familiar with Montgomery County, but just to confirm, does Montgomery County currently assist ICE in removing undocumented immigrants? What's the policy there?
Not just because they're immigrants. They don't assist. If somebody's in our jail and they've got a criminal record, and that record is the record isn't made available. That record is available by de facto the way it's reported to ICE. And if they see there's somebody in our jail who is of interest to them because they've committed a serious crime, and they've pretty much limited themselves to asking us for people who've committed serious crimes. In our discussions with them, they've actually said, we're not interested in people who are simply living here going about our business. So we've assisted, when they get released from jail, we've released them to ICE sometimes. But the other stuff, we don't release them to ICE. If somebody's in our jail and they haven't done anything, or somebody's not in our jail, if we pick somebody up for a traffic offense, we don't run their number for, did you go 10 miles over the limit? And then you discover they're on, they're wanted only because they're not here legally. We don't do that. And we're not going to do that.
Gotcha. And one last thing, earlier you said if you don't have to do something, you're probably not going to. But, if some kind of mandate like this did come down, how would Montgomery County resist?
I wouldn't know how we'd have to talk with our legal people. I mean, if we're legally ordered to do something, I think we have to do something. I don't know how we could not do something that was legally ordered. But when they're in the gray area where they don't have a legal authority to mandate us to do things, I'm hoping we have the space to do that. And I would hope that if we got ordered to do something we thought was illegal, that our first step would be to try to go to court to get it blocked. I would have no hesitancy to go to court over anything that our lawyers thought was an illegal extension of federal power.
When it comes to public safety, public safety obviously constitutionally is typically a state matter, with immigration being one of the rare things that is federal enforcement responsibility. Because public safety is typically a state responsibility constitutionally, a mandate for example, law enforcement in Montgomery County to participate in federal immigration enforcement would need to come from the state of Maryland as a state law change. I do not anticipate the state of Maryland would ever make such a state law change. Now, there are programs where voluntarily, and I do know a number of jurisdictions in Maryland, I think 3 or 4 jurisdictions in Maryland do participate in that program, particularly through sheriff's offices. I believe Harford County and a couple others do that, where they can do enforcement of federal immigration through a deputization agreement that they sign with ICE. Montgomery County has never been party to any of those agreements, nor have, I think, the vast majority of counties in the state of Maryland have never been party to any of those agreements. And so any change in our posture in public safety would first be necessity. If we were required to do it, it would be required through a state mandate. There's no deputization of local law enforcement that the president can do legally, to my understanding. But obviously, as the county executive alluded to, this will be a source of constant conversation, both with our county attorney's office, but also the attorney general of the state of Maryland and his office as well, to make sure that, we are using we're following the law of the U.S. and the law of the state of Maryland consistently.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Natalie. Any other questions from members of the media at this time? Going once, going twice. That looks like it's it for this afternoon. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Mr. County Executive.
Thank you all.